Thank you very much for having the opportunity to speak here to you. As we are far behind schedule, I'll try to catch up a little, and so please excuse if I talk a little bit fast. So fasten your seatbelts now, and let's go straight into the subject. As mentioned by Jan, I'm not speaking in an official position for the state of Hamburg, as I'm now with the Hamburg Institute, which is a private research and consulting company. We're working a lot though for several district heating providers and also for communities. Among them, of course, is Hamburg, and so we are still very much familiar with the policies in Hamburg and with the plans, but we are not responsible for the plans. So, in some aspects, I may also have some critical words on some of the aspects, but in general, I will simply try to explain what is going on without going too much into details, but about trying to state maybe more a bit of the overall general view of what is going on here and what should be done also. Okay, now talking about the district heating system of Hamburg, I can show you the first slide. You might ask, what does this have to do with district heating in Hamburg? It's a picture of one of the biggest catastrophes that happened here in Hamburg in 1842, which was the Great Fire, which basically devastated half of the existing city at that time. And so that was caused by decentral boilers. It devastated the city hall, which you can also see here in the picture. And so the city's Senate at that time concluded that they wanted to prevent happening this again. And so the new city hall then actually was already one of the first customers more than 130 or 120 years ago from today. The first district heating plant was connected just a block away from the new city hall, which is in this picture, and so it has it was basically quite a symbol that the city hall was basically the nucleus of the district heating the system, and it also didn't come to their mind that we're talking about climate change as we do today, talking about district heating. It was for different reasons, of course, that as well as in most other European cities, as most of you are familiar with. So we have come a long way. Maybe looking back just a little bit more. So the first phase of the district heating system in Hamburg maybe could be called like the central city heating, and so the main driver, as I said, was fire protection, but it was also abatement of air pollutions. So central boilers outside the very main inner city, particularly after the Second World War. So also trying to prevent some of the pollution that the city was suffering at that time, and also the dependency on imports was quite an issue in the first phases, of course. So when oil played a big role in the heating of the city, particularly, of course, then to substitute this and substitute it mainly with coal. Which were Germany, as you know, has a lot or had a lot of coal. So these were the main drivers for these centralized systems. And then the second system maybe could be called district heating with a large coal CHP. And this is where the heritage that we're dealing with today and that I want to talk about a little bit further today is. So we had a big grid growth at the time after the Second World War, particularly in the 60s, 70s, and also in the 80s. And in the terms of production, we basically had two very big plants, not in the city center, but one a little bit outside, even outside the city boundaries. And sorry for not translating here one of these sentences. And also it was the phase where the heat was basically seen as a byproduct. It was not the core product of of these plants, but a byproduct for the power production. So these plants were mainly basically running all the time, and the heat was used, as in many parts of Europe. It was just the same case in Hamburg. So dealing with this heritage is basically what is lying ahead of us today, because we are still today at a point where we are far from being climate neutral or anything that we call sustainable. So the footprint of the district heating in Hamburg, of course, it depends a lot on how you calculate and how you allocate the CO2 emissions in the product of power and in the product of heat. But if you calculate it in the official way that the official statistics go, then the district heating is not better than decentralized efficient gas boilers. So the district heating covers around 20% now of the total heat demand. It's supposed to grow significantly in the next 10 years, up to 35%. But today, even though it has only 20% of the total heat demand, it causes 30% of the CO2 emissions because of these coal boilers that are basically feeding the district heating system. But Hamburg has actually made a big turnaround regarding its goals. One of the biggest steps in the Hamburg energy policy in the last years was to buy back the district heating system. In my view, it was a big mistake to sell it in the first place, which happened in the late 1990s due to budgetary reasons. Basically, the city government at that time wanted to make money, and they sold the district heating system to a foreign company. And so it was not in control of the district heating system anymore. And so the city government, or actually the city as such, realized that this was a mistake and voted in a referendum to buy back the system for about €1 billion. So that has come into effect, and we're now back in the control of the district heating system. And so now what is being done is to use this control and to make the system sustainable. And that's what I want to talk about in the next slides. So what's ahead of us? These are the two plants that Senator Kerstin talked about, Wedel and Tiefstark, both of them coal-fired CHP, and they make 2/3 of the heat generation, and that has to be compensated, 700 megawatts capacity overall. So it's quite a bit that has to be done in the next 10 years at the latest. That's when the law says that when coal has to be phased out for district heating in Hamburg. In my expectation, it will be earlier, though. So we're starting with the plant in Wedel. That is the first plant that Mr. Kerstin talked about. So it will be decommissioned in 2025, hopefully. And so it will be replaced by the mixture of technologies that we have already heard about today. So it's a mixture of waste incineration, of course, also the industrial waste heat, a heat pump, which is something new for German district heating. Those of you from Scandinavia may think, well, that's an old deal, and why does he talk about it? No, it's not. In Germany, it's quite something new. We have large heat pumps in district heating systems. We're just seeing the first cases here. So it's a cluster of low temperature but also high temperature sources, as some of the industrial waste heat is actually high temperature waste heat, and also the waste incineration is not low temperature heat. And also the CHP that we have heard about, they are making up a large bit of the district heating system. So that is something that will maybe carry us for the next 15 years or so, but it can't be the solution, of course not. Just switching from coal to gas is not taking us to where we want to be. So we do need some extra capacity for power production as we phase out nuclear power plants and as we phase out coal power production in Germany. So in fact, we have a need for some additional gas power production. And of course, it's reasonable to produce this power in CHP and also to take advantage of the heat that is produced in these plants. But this will be a totally different picture from how these plants are going to be run in 10, 15 years with very high percentages of volatile power production. And so we will not see these power plants running basically the whole time, but they will be running only a very limited time. And so we have to come up with solutions apart from gas CHPs. And gas CHP will basically fill in the gaps and maybe also be in some time lead to fill up storages when the power is needed. And so we're going to have to talk about storage, heat storage as well. And we're going to do this later on. So, and also they will play a big role in topping up the low temperature heat sources, because today our system is not able, we have talked about it and heard about it earlier, to deal with low temperature heat in the Hamburg district heating system today. So we need on cold winter days 120 degrees, and it will take decades to lower the temperature needs. And so to have some sort of higher temperature heat sources to give the extra 10, 20, 30 degrees from the low temperature heat, that is something that we depend on in the next years. And so the mindset that we see at large district heating, the third or fourth district heating generation now is coming away from the system that we have just talked about, the first generation and the second generation with a large plants outside the city. And we're seeing a much more integrated, and we see it as a platform, basically, the district heating system. And we have to incorporate many different sources, and these sources will be very diverse, of course. And so we've talked already about industrial waste heat, maybe some solar as well. Of course, district heating will need much dependency on the power system. We should use the power, but though as efficient as possible. So large-scale heat pumps will play a big role. We'll also see some biomass, I think, especially for peak boilers. Now, it's also about a transformation of the entire system, not only about the generation, we've talked already a little bit, but also about the distribution and the storage, we will talk about a little bit more, but also maybe on the sales and on the consumption side, on the metering side, lowering return temperatures. That's something where the heat customers have to be involved. And there are many instruments, and we will have to look at this closely in the next years. But I can't go much more into detail here. So looking at the generation side is what I want to emphasize on today. So we have some bricks or blocks that can form and that can feed into this district heating system, this new generation district heating system that is being evolved in the next years. So this is an overview here. And we will go straight into all these blocks one after another. Of course, waste is the typical renewable, if you want to say so, source for district heating. That's something that has been done for decades now, not only in Hamburg but in most cities. But even though it's an old deal, there has to be some innovation, I think. So waste incineration is of course not done for the purpose of district heating, but it's done for getting rid of the waste. And so there are some restrictions on what district heating demands can do. But to use the energy from these sources as efficient as possible and is also something that has to be aimed at. And so at the moment we have in all these plants here, power production that is basically feeding in power the whole time into the power grid. We don't need this kind of power production in the future. What we need is a more flexible power production. We have many hours with a very low power prices. We will have many more hours of negative power prices as wind and solar power production will rise in the next years. So it could be a good idea to lower the electricity production in these waste incineration plants and feed more of the energy into the district heating system, and also to store the heat when there is an overproduction of heat. So that is something that could be done. And also alternatively, of course, that's still a lot of research that's being done, but there are pilot projects to run these power plants when there is a heat demand, and maybe to store some of the primary energy over a longer period, so we don't have that much energy and that much combustion in the summer, and a little bit more in the wintertime. Looking at biomass, of course, is something that is a low-hanging fruit, and that has been done not only in Hamburg, but in most places where they look at transformation of district heating system. So what is planned here is a biomass CHP plant by the city-owned waste company with a 35 megawatt capacity, flexible power production, so it can alternate either 4.4 or 11 megawatts. So that's quite some flexibility, and also optional biogas boilers with a 10 megawatt heat output. So I think that's a reasonable use of the domestic waste, basically, we have here in Hamburg. We've also studied, of course, other biomass sources. Of course, there are limited sources only from regional sources. Forest wood, we have a lot of forests that are actually dying and have died in the last days. So there's a lot of wood coming up in the next years. Also, short rotation plants. We looked at straw. There are quite some resources to be picked up there. Also, some other residues, maybe even grass. But in the end, it's a limited availability. And also what we must see is that there is much more demand for high temperature energy and combustion processes in other sources. In district heating, we don't need combustion, actually. So we should try to avoid combustion where we can and give these limited resources to the sectors that have a much higher need for higher temperatures. We can deal with low temperatures, and we don't need biomass. So let's limit as much as we can. We're also looking in Hamburg, or I must say, the administration is looking at the import of wood chips. We've seen a lot of conversion in the Scandinavian states with import from wood chips from sources that claim to be sustainable, but I have some doubts that in the end, if that's really the solution to import wood chips, and that cannot be done at a large scale in many cities at the same time. So we should limit that to peak boilers, even if we have some sources that are quite interesting to look at, as that the city administration is doing now. So in Namibia, there is a problem where they have bushes that grow into the scenery, and it's actually a biodiversity problem that these bushes are not supposed to be there. And so taking the wood and import them to Hamburg is something that is looked at, but it's quite disputed, actually. So some of you may have the same discussions in your cities. So undisputed basically is to use the waste heat from sewage treatment plants. That's been done in Scandinavia now for long times, and quite a success story. It hasn't been done in Germany because our power prices are basically too high, have been too high. And now, as the federal level has come up with new legislation, making power prices, making exceptions there, and making power prices affordable, having also a big scheme in the new CHP law, we see that it's actually feasible, economically feasible, to use large heat pumps in the sewage treatment plant. And that's one of the big issues here that will replace a big part of what is needed from the coal decommissioned plants. Also, we have big rivers, as you all know. We have the Elbe River, right, in Hamburg, and it's basically in the middle of the city. So using the heat in this river That is something that's not rocket science, but it's also done also in many cities, especially in Scandinavia, where heat pumps have been a favorite because of the low power prices. And so we haven't studied that really deeply yet, but I'm sure that this will play a very big role in the future of the Hamburg district heating system, as this source is so easily available, as the existing power plants are located right at the river. You can even use the cooling water plants that suck the water out of the river so far to cool the coal-fired heating plants. You can use these devices to get the water for the heat pumps. And so half of the infrastructure at these sites is already there. So I think we will see some conversion of the district heating power plants to river water heat pumps. Also, using waste heat from decentral heat sources will be a big deal in Germany and in Hamburg, as we have seen already as well. There have been lots of studies in London as well, showing that even a city as London that does not have any big industry, but rather low temperature commercial waste heat from warehouses and freezing houses, data centers, and so forth, that could basically heat the entire city if there was a low temperature district heating system there. And looking at Stockholm is also very encouraging, where the data centers can feed quite many dwellings already. So we will have to look at this much closer in Germany and in Hamburg as well, but we've just started to do that. We're much further with industrial waste heat, as we have a steel smelter here, we have the copper smelter that we have just heard of, we have cooling water here, and we also have aluminum smelter. And so 3 large metal smelters here in Hamburg. And so using this energy will be quite decisive to come up with a big share of climate neutral heat. And we've got some new funding programs, which could still be better, as waste heat is not considered as renewable heat yet, which is a pity when they come from efficient sources. And what we're working with the federal level and trying to change that. Geothermal has been a big unknown factor so far in Hamburg. We know now for many decades, I must say, that we have a high potential of geothermal resources. We're talking about 150 megawatts that we expect to have, where basically the city is sitting on, but we don't know it. No one has ever really in the last decades drilled there and knows how good the resources are. Because we're arguing about who's taking the risk, just a few million euros. We can't afford to wait any longer. And I'm very happy that now we have some federal money and we have the first drilling coming up in the next year already, I think, in Hamburg-Wilhelmsburg. And then we will know much better how good the resources actually will be. And so I think it has been quite worthwhile to follow up in this project. I've started this actually as a state secretary more than 10 years ago. And so it has been quite frustrating on the way not to see it going, but I'm very happy that it's coming now. Solar heat could also be something, maybe we have seen already a picture of the heat bunker with the solar thermal on it. Of course, we have, as many big cities, limitations on the spaces, but we have also landfills that could be used for solar thermal. So that is something that is under consideration. I'm very hesitant that this will play a large role in Hamburg, because we have so much surplus heat already in Hamburg with the waste heat sources. And so I think it will rather be something that will be under consideration, maybe some more smaller sources, but it will not play a major role in the next decade or so. What we definitely will need is large-scale heat. As I just mentioned, we have more heat sources available in summer from renewable energies and from fluctuating sources than we need. So we need to transfer this heat, take this heat when it's there, and transfer it to the heating period. And so we're talking not about these normal heat storages that every district heating system has, like 50,000 cubic meters or so, but we have to think in much higher dimensions. So the 200,000 cubic meters that are built already in Denmark, that is something that would be already be a good start. Of course, we have the same issues regarding space in Hamburg. So if you think of the space that is needed, you could think of basically sort of a large soccer pitch, a stadium. And so it's quite obvious that that's quite a lot of area, and so looking under the ground is something that has to be done, and that is actually being done. So using the groundwater, the aquifers under the city, heated up in summertime with the surplus heat that is there. That is also done in the same project that is exploring the geothermal potentials, and taking it out in wintertime. That is an option that will play a large role in many district heating systems, I think, in the future. And I'm very, very happy to be part of actually this project as well in Hamburg-Wilhelmsburg, looking at a different subject though, but it will be very interesting to see the results of this aquifer storage. Last slide is maybe my vision here that we have given there. It's a large district heating hub. It's in the port of Hamburg, and you see the sewage treatment plant in the center here. You also see windmills. They are the sector coupling between. They symbolize the sector coupling between electricity and the heating sectors. They're feeding the heat pumps that use the heat, low temperature heat in the sewage water. You see also the pipes coming from the industrial waste heat feeding into, in summertime, feeding into the large storage that could be built here in the ground using the aquifer storages. You could also have solar thermal on the sewage treatment plant. And so here, I hope we can create in the next years something like an innovative district heating hub where so many technologies come together. And so once we all can meet together after the pandemic is over, I hope we can show you in Hamburg in maybe 10 years or so something beautiful as in this picture, which is not reality, but just a vision. Thank you very much.